Superintendent here, and welcome back to my channel. I've got a fun Halloween themed video here for you guys today. Now, I didn't want to do a book tag really because those are kind of all over the place right now. So I decided to go with kind of the other way of doing a Halloween video, and I'm going to be doing how to invoke fear in your readers. I'm not talking like horror books here. I don't write horror books. I just mean like in a general fiction book, how do you invoke a fearful response in your readers when you need to? How do you write tension? How do you make your readers fear for your characters? Tip number 1, most important rule. Your readers need to be invested in your characters. If your reader hates your character and wants them to die, then a madman coming at them with a knife is not gonna scare your reader, because secretly your reader's thinking, please let the person with the knife catch up and kill them. As for how to make your readers invested in your characters, that's another video that has to do with character building and making the people feel real, making them likable but also flawed. So stay tuned for a character building video and I'll go over that. Tip number 2. Give readers an early sample of what you're capable of. Now, when I say sample, I mean literally a sample. Like, don't get too gratuitous with the violence really early on and desensitize your readers, but let them know a little bit of what you're capable of doing with maybe a small injury. For example, in the first chapter of Aletheia, there is a brief description of a nightmare that gets a little descriptive, and I've had a couple readers tell me that they really liked that in the first chapter they got a little sample of how far I would go with the descriptions and what they could expect to get from them. Tip number 3, have real and significant stakes. So this might be one of the reasons I don't read contemporary, but I like the characters' lives to be on the line because it makes the emotions more intense. Now, this does depend on genre, keep that in mind, but in the genre I write, which is dystopian sci-fi, generally people's lives are at risk. Now, there are still different levels of stakes here because there's your main character's life being at risk, there's secondary characters the main character cares about, there's the entire world's lives being at risk, so there are different levels. So make sure the stakes are high enough that your readers feel invested in the story and what's happening and the outcome. Tip number 4, show you're capable of following through. By this I mean if you're constantly putting your characters in dangerous situations, you can't have them always getting away without a scratch. You have to show that these situations are real in the context of your story and that your characters are actually at risk. And to do this, you can have them get seriously injured. You can have negative things happen because of the situations they're put in, like maybe someone dies, like a secondary character. Maybe one of your main characters dies. Maybe someone loses an arm. And also, to show that you're capable of following through, you can sometimes start out the book with this damage already in place to show that you're not afraid of maiming characters. So for example, 1633 in Aletheia, when this book starts out, he's missing an arm. He's an amputee, and he lost his arm in something that's referenced later in the story. So right away, I told readers, this is what happens in this world. People lose arms, people die, and I'm prepared to do that to the characters I love. So you should be scared. Tip number 5, give each scene the weight it deserves. If you're gonna have a torture scene or a death scene, don't just like throw that information in there. If you're gonna have those scenes, then you wanna get as much as you can out of them by putting the reader in those shoes. You want the reader to be running for their lives right around with that character. So don't just throw out the information in passing, don't just say, like in past tense, that it happened without really putting the reader in that spot. An example of this is Throne of Glass. There's this creature roaming the castle and murdering people, and it should be scary, it should be tense and suspenseful. But instead, all of these murders were told about after the fact. And there's not a lot of times where we're actually in the situation where this monster feels real, like an actual threat. Tip number 6, up the intensity as you go. Don't start out in the first chapter with a huge amount of gratuitous violence and then keep that same level throughout the whole book. because you need to bring people up to the climax of the book, and to do that you need to be upping not only the stakes, but you also need to be upping the violence and the impacts as you go up until you hit the climax, and then you kind of trickle down from there. Tip number 7, if the reader sees it coming, they're less likely to be impacted by it. For the most part, if you're watching a horror movie and someone's going into the dark basement and there's music in the background that's ramping up and it ramps up to that point where you know something's gonna jump out, you're less likely to jump because you know that jump scare is coming. So try to throw it in early. Try to throw in a kind of scare or tension that the reader isn't expecting. Maybe your character walks through this dark tunnel and nothing comes out at them, and then they walk out of the tunnel through the door and someone stabs them in the back, and then they have to fight for their life. So the reader has started to relax, they think nothing's gonna happen, they're calm, and then bam, they're hit with sudden action, tension, and danger. And that's gonna affect them a lot harder then because they didn't see it coming. Another way to do this is to break normal cliches of tense scenes. So you can do this by Googling like what a kind of cliche is for tense and scary scenes, maybe horror cliches, and then go and take those cliches and twist them around and break them, because people will think that they definitely know what's coming, and then you'll just come out of nowhere and surprise them, and they'll be much more impacted. Tip number 8, use immersion. To be truly impacted by the scene, your reader needs to feel like they are right there in the danger. And you should do this by pulling on all of the senses of the point of view character, and also by putting yourself in their shoes. So if a character is holding a knife to your MC, they have it against their throat, and all your character thinks is, oh crap, I might die. Your reader isn't gonna really feel the real fear that they should be in that moment. Your reader is gonna think, oh, well, I mean, I know they're not gonna die, so eh. So what you wanna do is you want to put yourself in the mind of that character. Imagine that this thing is happening to you right now and you could actually die, and portray that in your writing. Number 9, last tip, plot armor. Basically, characters that are protected from things that they shouldn't have survived based solely on the fact that they are main characters. You shouldn't have this. I know you can't kill off all of your characters because the story has to be about someone, but if you're writing a dark book where villains are dying left and right, you need to kill some of your main characters. Especially because by showing you're capable of killing main characters, your readers will feel a lot more fear and a lot more investment, because they know that in that scene where that character that they love and care about is pinned under a knife, that character could actually die. There's real stakes because they know that the author is capable of slitting their throat and that character being gone forever. So I'm a big fan of killing your darlings. I'll link a video down below where I actually talk about how to murder your characters. It's something I love. In Aletheia, you can expect some characters to die. And so far of all the reviews I've had a lot of people talking about how immersive it was and how real the emotions were and how much they cared and were thrown into it. And a lot of that is because towards the last third of the book, I proved that I was capable of killing even important characters, main characters. I showed them that I was brutal enough to go through with it. And by doing that, they then had a more investment in all of the dangerous scenes after that, because they knew that those characters could actually die. They knew that I was capable of murdering them in cold blood in horrible, violent ways. So that made them more invested in all of the ending scenes. So that way you get people to binge read, you get people emotionally immersed, and people come out of the book actually remembering it and feeling impacted by it, which is hugely important. Alright guys, well that was it for how to invoke fear in your readers. There's all sorts of tricks and tips to this. I'm just doing one video, but if you have tips and tricks of your own, something I didn't cover, make sure to include that in a comment down below, because I'm really interested to hear other people's opinions on this. And yeah, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know that you liked it. That helps me figure out what content's doing best and what I should do more of. So make sure to give me a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next video.